Today on the podcast, I'm joined by Lorne London up in Toronto. He's the publisher at, I believe, Post City and Streets of Toronto. Are those two kind of different publications? Yeah. Okay. And we've talked a few times. We're introduced by a mutual friend, and I think we've already been recording for like 5 or 10 minutes before this. We decided we should actually start. So, Lorne, thank you, man. Great to finally get you on here.
Hey, Paul. Great to be here.
Yeah. Could you just set the stage a little bit? Tell me a little bit about your career and, you know, your publications you have and everything. Just tell us a little bit of the story to set a baseline for the audience.
I'll try and be quick about it.
Yeah.
1989 started what was a traditional community newspaper with a partner at the time. And we, put out this 8-page newsprint thing for people in a neighborhood in Toronto that had no community newspaper. And there were community newspapers in some of the other neighborhoods, but not all of them. And it's actually the neighborhood that Drake now lives in. Coincidentally, it's called Bayview, the bridle path where Drake lives. So that's a coincidence. I don't think Drake lived there at the time. I believe he grew up in a Forest Hill, which is another area where we have a publication. So I started this publication and, we started doing it. I was doing it in my basement of my home and we got really successful. And I moved it to my dining room table from my basement. And my basement was unheated and I live in Toronto, Canada. So you can imagine how big a move that was. That was like a watershed moment that I even speak about 37 years later. Okay. So from there, today we have 8 publications in the most affluent and established neighborhoods by postal code in Canada. So it's a very affluent, very established reach. Some of them are super cool, young, hip neighborhoods. Some of them are more established, still very wonderful neighborhoods, but they have a different flavor, each one of them. We reach 200,000 readers every month, about 100,000 copies of the magazines. They're magazines now, they're glossy. They still have a newsprint body. They go from about, sometimes they're 68 pages. Sometimes they can be as much as over 100 pages. We use the postal service to deliver them all we go to every single home in every single area. So it's blanket coverage. And that's our print business. Just think of it like a hybrid between a traditional city magazine, say like for you, it's American Audience, say Chicago Magazine, LA Magazine, etc., and sort of probably the strongest food publication in the city. And I kind of like to think of it as that hybrid, which is actually what has made it still successful. And we now do we print twice as many copies, we distribute twice as many people as the traditional city magazine in Toronto. So we're technically more successful than they are, I presume. And that's because our cost structure has been kept a little bit lower because we blanket cover these areas. I often like to say we were free before the internet.
Nice.
That's our print side. We have we have a website like everyone else does. We have newsletters, we have live events, and we have social. And social is very strong for us. We have about 1.4, 1.5 million social media followers, specifically in the city of Toronto. Everything we do is Toronto based. And the social side is coming on quite strong, but our print side is still very, very viable. Very strong. Like it represents the lion's share of the money that we earn, but the social media side is also really starting to punch above its weight. Newsletters and web, of course, are important, but you can see the web diminishing as we all use chat or Claude or Gemini. So there's 2 pieces. That's when you introduced me, you were saying, oh, what are these 2 things? Post City, which is the magazines, and Streets of Toronto, which is the social. And the social is obviously a little bit younger demographic, but everything is about a flywheel. So Streets of Toronto represents all of the digital assets. The web is Streets of Toronto. The newsletters are Streets of Toronto, and the Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, which we actually have a significant audience still, is also Streets of Toronto.
I see. Okay, cool. And yeah, I definitely want to dig into the social stuff a bit. That's kind of what the premise of the podcast was, but we'll dive into that in a minute. It's cool how you literally started in a basement. It's like the Steve Jobs story or something almost.
Just like Steve.
Yeah,
Steve
just like
and
Steve.
Me, same.
Yeah, you're really hard to deal with, like Steve Jobs too, from what I could tell.
Yeah, terrible.
Like just throwing chairs across offices and stuff. If something misprinted or something. But from the business side, like you said, you started, I'm sure, just print in 1989. Is that what you said? 87, 89,
yes.
something like that.
And it's funny you mentioned Steve Jobs. we were able to publish and be a publishing company because of Apple. I mean, because we
Hmm,
had, an SC, which we still have at the office. We don't make anything on it, but it sits in the waiting room in a place of honor, because without that,
nice.
we would not be the publishers we are today. And a laser writer, which was an Apple printer at the time. They cost $10,000. I remember we borrowed the money to buy them
Wow. Yeah.
and paid it off pretty quickly, actually, because the magazines actually the magazine did very well, quite right out of the gate, pretty well.
Very cool. Over that time span, kind of what I was getting at, over almost 40 years, going from print to now, obviously everybody's digital, social media, newsletters, events, all this stuff. From a business standpoint, you kind of mentioned on our initial call, maybe a month ago or so, you talked about publishing businesses needing to hit singles, not home runs, because, a lot of podcasts like this and stuff are like, what's the magic pill? What's the one thing that's going to do it? But I'm guessing you've hit a lot of singles along the way. Okay,
With
I'd
the
like, yeah, get your take on that a little bit. What are your thoughts on that? Yeah.
I think I learned that early with the print magazines. We had a lot of competition early on. We had the city magazines. There was a larger community, newspaper company in Toronto. There was also the Daily Newspaper, used to own 85 community newspapers across the province. And those were the people we were competing with. And I just remember always thinking, what is that? What's that home run? What's that major initiative that we need to just get past this, to get past our competitors? And you try that for a while, and you realize that it's just about singles. It's just about putting it together. It's about, at that time, this is going to sound like nothing to anybody, but at that time community newspapers didn't have glossy covers. So a
Hmm.
glossy cover was a really important single to hit. You know what, community newspapers didn't have the top food writer who was working for the daily newspapers at the time working for them, but that was another single, right? A
Hmm.
legitimacy of content. And then other columnists, and getting more high profile columnists, and on and on and on. Like, I don't want to belabor the point, but it dawned on me, and it still to this day, it just drives everything we do. You put everything you can into each at bat. But you know what? It's okay to hit singles, because you put enough singles together, you're gonna score runs and you're gonna win. And that's kind of how we do it.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's the way people should be thinking about it. It's also just playing the long game. I'm sure a lot of companies that started as like a print magazine in the 80s are not still here because they probably did not pivot
We
or,
don't have a single competitor in the city of Toronto left,
yeah,
except for the
that's
city
crazy.
magazine, which is so diminished now that it's about half our print run. So
Yeah.
it still exists, but from an advertising standpoint, the ads that are in it are a tenth, an eighth of what we have, right? And
Wow.
that was never the case. So yes, it playing the long game is super important. I have a lot of our previous staff, team, whatever you want to call people, who work at other publications or other things in the city. And when we get together, obviously they're just blowing smoke up our bumps, but they say, how great it was to work here. But we also always give things a longer opportunity to succeed. If you want and I know every publisher feels like this, because, certainly you have limited resources, but the ROI cannot be there immediately. It can't, I mean, I
Mhm.
guess it can if you get lucky, but like the best things that we do now took 2 or 3 years to get going, at least. And they are real drivers of our growth now. But they were just, it took a little while for those things to go, and you had to keep doing them. You had to believe in them.
That's great. So pivoting far away from the print part, you kind of talked about the broader business, and like I said, the most impressive thing when Jake first introduced us was your social media, what you've done there. Yeah, I think you said 1.4, over a million for sure, 1.4 million followers in Toronto, in the Toronto area, I'm guessing.
Across the different platforms. We're
Yeah.
strongest on Instagram. We have two major feeds, one with probably about 600 and let's say almost 700,000 followers, and the other one is approaching 150,000. I think it's like 148,000. And
Okay.
that was a much newer feed that we started just like a year and a half ago, which was more for events, but our main feed is really very, very strong. I think we've done a good job of building the brand, and we've done some really cool things to build that brand.
Yeah. I think the question I kind of wanted to
Chan
ask you is, it's a lot of, local media publishers basically that have been on the show and listened to the show. And like that's one of the things I hear the most often from clients and just people on the podcast, listeners to the show, is how to actually, a few things, how to grow on social, and then how to actually convert that into, something that hits the bottom line, or
Right.
brings people over to your owned properties or whatever like that. But how do you have any advice for local publishers that you've learned grow it? Let's just start with that, with growing on Instagram, TikTok, whatever. You said Instagram. I think you told me Instagram is the most important one to you also on our initial call.
Well,
Um,
we're best. Like I would say to publishers, you can't be great at everything, right? Like
mhm.
so like we're great at print. We really are. We're very fortunate. We have an incredible team. We have an incredible level of longevity. The content is wonderful. I think we've done all the right things with our audience and making sure that we weren't relying on subscriptions and made sure we blanket cover the best hoods, whatever it is. That same concept we've put into our Instagram feed, which is, to build a community. Really, I'm going to say something that's going to sound pretty weird to you, maybe to your listeners too. I've always said this, that every publication, without exception, is a community newspaper at its heart.
Mm,
Rolling Stone, you have a guitar on the back of your wall there. The
I do.
listeners don't know that. Rolling Stone is a community newspaper. It's a community newspaper of people who love music,
Yeah.
right? Playboy is a community newspaper of people who love long form journalism and other things too. But my point is, or Forbes is a community newspaper of people who love business articles,
hmm
right? The Wall Street Journal is like, et cetera, et cetera. They're
hmm
groups of interest. And so we brought that to our social media feed. And it's a community. And we believe that they're like minded people who like certain things, and there's certain things they don't like. And we try and cover those things that they like within that community. So we treat it very similarly to a magazine, or in some cases, a radio show in a way. Like we give away a lot of tickets to concerts and sports events, just like old rock and roll stations used to give away tickets to shows, because nobody's doing that anymore. And I don't know if you've gone to a show lately. Like I wanted to go see MJ Lennerman at the concert hall. He's an indie rocker. I don't know if you're familiar with him. He's great. Should listen to him. But it's like for the cheapest seats, it's like $300 a seat. Like
Yeah.
it's crazy.
Yeah.
So giving kids or your millennials or older tickets to these shows that they may not be able to go is part of our ethos. We give away tickets every single week. And it just has that kind of old school vibe, to me anyway, of a rock and roll station, right? And like, in the day, your rock and roll station defined what you listened to and who you were, right? And so I hope that our social media feed does the same. And so that's one of the things we've done to build an audience. Another thing we've done is, and this is going to sound totally counterintuitive, we do not report on negative things. We just don't. It's just not it's in our ethos. We celebrate the city we live in. And we think that that's the community that we're part of. That there's enough people telling you why it sucks to live somewhere. We don't need to do that. We actually like living here. If it sucks living here, don't follow us, and maybe you should move, frankly. 'Cause maybe you're not happy here. But we're
Yeah.
happy here. We love Toronto. It's a great city. Like it's great, honestly. So that's part of what I would suggest to publishers is define the audience, which they know that, but try and bring that kind of feeling of community to it. That's why I bring that, like I think I bring that community piece to everything, because that's what I was started with Post City. And I think I think it's why the audience is growing so massively.
Yeah. I love the vibe of an old rock and roll station. I instantaneously knew what you mean, like the community there. Like I remember like listening to KBPI Rocks the Rockies in Denver growing up. And yeah, man, I was like a devoted listener to that. And listen, like you said, listen for tickets and staying
Right.
connected
And
and
I,
all that stuff. Yeah.
I bet it was an indie rock station, because that's kind of how we want to be. We don't want to be corporate with it. It's just there's enough corporate. There's enough
hmm
all of that stuff. You
hmm
want, because if community, being part of a community, I think, is being part of something that's kind of cool. Something
hmm
that, like define, like relates to you and defines you, and you define it. So yes, that's exactly what we're going for. The positivity, the fun. We have fun all the time. Like our hundreds of thousands of followers seem to really love a good joke,
hmm
right? They love, on April Fools, we do something cool. Like they just love that. And so and that's what I remember of my radio stations of the rock and roll stations of my youth, or the KRP even. I mean, if you want to go there.
Right. On the growing the social media platforms, stick on that for a minute. So you mentioned, the singles you go after, or like the kind of initiatives you go after, look at it as like a 2 or 3 year thing or whatever. What's that growth look like for you guys? Like, social media has been around for a while now. A lot of people are just now investing in it or paying, publishers are just not paying attention to it or whatever. Like, how long did it take you to get to 1.4 million? What tactics did you use? Yeah, you talked about the community part, but like, did you use any paid, paying the machine or anything like that to grow
No, like
tactically? Yeah.
we certainly have experimented with that early on, but
Yeah.
you know, uh, of course, there's no proof, and of course, Meta will definitely vehemently deny this, but I don't feel it helps your reach. I think it
Yeah.
kind of just reaffirms to the algorithm that you're someone who will pay for reach,
Hmm.
and I think it has its place for certain things, but we don't particularly do it. Right? We might do it for
Yeah.
a concert every once in a while, like for a contest, see if we can get broader reach, right? Just to reach people maybe outside of the city because we want to expand our Toronto's a very large city. It's like the fourth largest city in North America. And so you might want to expand our reach. We might do that every once in a while, but the rest of it, no, it isn't the thing. Like something fun that we did. I don't know if it's a tangent, so please feel free to cut me
No,
off.
I love tangents. Yeah.
So for the last 3 years, we created a beer.
Hmm.
It's called Rick. So Toronto's really Raccoon City. Like the raccoon is our unofficial or official mascot. And so we created Raccoon Lager, trademarked, and we did it in conjunction with an independent beer brewer, and it is something that we did in conjunction with something called the Daily Bread Food Bank, which is the biggest food bank in Toronto. We took no profits from this. We sold over 10,000 cans of beer each year that we've done it. Each So the cans each have an identity of a raccoon of a neighborhood in Toronto. So, like as an example, there's a neighborhood called Danforth. It's the traditional Greek town of Toronto, and we named that raccoon Danny Forth, and he's on the can, and you see him, and we gave him an identity or her an identity. I can't remember specifically, but I believe Danny Forth is or Dan Forth is an exterior designer, and or maybe a binfluencer because raccoons love to go into bins, something like that. So every one of them, and this was kind of our naivete in doing beer. When you go to the beer store or the liquor store, you see beers; they all have the same label. Ours have a similar label, but each one is unique. So we have 8 different raccoon characters for 8 different communities in the city because our printing experience was, wow, you can print up. Like when you print, if you're a printing person, you could print 8 labels just as easily as you can print one because it's just one big sheet. So for us, it was like, why are you just printing one? Let's print 8. Let's give each one its own identity. Let's give them, their community, each one their community. And people loved, like there's one called Leah Side. It's called Lee Side. Rosie Dale, which is Rosedale. There's Parkdale, which is Parkerdale, and we made some of them siblings. One was like a rich sibling, one was like the younger, cooler sibling. You know what I mean? All these different things. Anyway, so we raised a lot of money for a great charity. We had, thousands of cans out there. Restaurants were selling it as well. And we had our QR code on the can, which could direct you totally right to our Instagram feed. And we got, obviously a lot of followers from it. This is like, I would call it a revenue neutral way to build audience, but to really build community and goodwill. I cannot stress enough that I think doing that proves that this is who we are. If you are this, you should be following us, right?
Mhm.
And so that was just something that we did, and it took off like crazy. People loved it. We sold out. Like we only made ten
Yeah.
thousand cans, and
Yeah.
we sold out each year. So that's something, right? Like you can do stuff that is revenue neutral, that is fun, that is cool. Having a beer was just like, hey, let's have a beer. Okay, let's have a beer. That's a great idea, right? Let's have a beer with our followers. Okay, how can we have a beer with our followers? Wait a sec. How can we have a beer with our followers and donate money to the biggest, food bank in the city, et cetera, et cetera. That's just an example. Sorry for the tangent, but I really love that initiative, and I think that there's something there for everybody who's a publisher.
Yeah. No, I love that tangent. I love anything beer. I like beer. I came from the beer industry. I spent 10 years at Coors distributor in Denver. So I'm fond of the industry and of drinking it myself.
I got to send you a 6-pack. It's gonna be a little stale. It's from last year, but hopefully you won't notice.
Right? Yeah, I love that. That's an awesome example of building that community and stuff. There's a place here in town. I live in a small town, 20,000 people in Western Colorado, and there's this new startup. I guess it was like a ghost kitchen pizza place, and they just opened a storefront downtown. It's so good. The only like slice pizza place in town. And what they've done, just this in the last couple months, they're lying out the door every day. They're open. It's crazy for a town this size. And their Instagram, they every week they have a little token with their mascot they did, which is a spinoff of Felix the cat. I forget the name. It's Felix's cousin,
Right.
with a slice of pizza. And every week they hide it somewhere in town and they just take a shot of it. And they're like, all right, come get it. It'll be like on a rock by a river in the park, or on a really distinctive fence that you drive by or
Right.
something. And if you get that token, you get a free slice, and you have to tag them on Instagram, bring it in. And it's crazy the growth they've had in a town this size. And like I said, that place is overflowing every week. Just so
Right.
revenue neutral, a slice of pizza, like gets that engagement going and everything. That's another example that kind of reminded me.
But it's not just a
Yeah.
slice of pizza, is it?
No.
So your pizza place, getting back to that, is just a
Yeah.
community.
Yeah.
It's a community of like-minded people who love pepperoni or double cheese or thin crust pizza or whatever it is that they serve. The pizza that defies gravity, which is the one I love. I hate droopy pizza. It's just a thing. What can I tell you?
I see.
Don't judge me. Interestingly, we also combine a lot of food into what we do. Not so much on the feed, because it actually doesn't necessarily respond to feed as in a traditional way. But every milestone, well, not every milestone, but some of the bigger milestones we've hit. When we hit 500,000, we went to this university campus downtown and we gave out 500 cookies and milk, like really good gourmet cookies with milk out of a truck, food truck. And then
Right.
when we hit 600,000, we teamed up with, shows you're changing a little bit. We teamed up with Shake Shack, who was new to Toronto. I don't know if you guys have Shake Shack. I'm sure you do, but Shake
Yep.
Shack coming to Canada was a bit of a big deal. And we teamed up with them, and they were amazing partners, I must say. And we gave away 600 burgers, because we reached 600,000. It was just kind of a thing that you kind of want to celebrate your community. So I guess all I can say is, like, celebrate your community, define your community, be positive, and bring an ethos to it. It doesn't have to be an independent rock and roll station. That's just what we did. That's just how we see it. Independent is really important to us in a sense, right? I think that the people who are on our feed, that's probably important to them, right? As opposed to a corporate, communications company or a corporate publishing company, which we are not. So yeah, sorry. What's next, Paul? Where do we go from here?
Just one more thing on the social piece, and then we'll get off of that. I just know that from what I hear from everybody's super interested. Like, how do you do this and everything? And I know, from what I've heard, that you're also monetizing that at this point. You have the scale, I'm sure, to do that. I was wondering if you could talk a bit about that, how you think about that, how you monetize. I guess let's go with Instagram. That's your biggest one. Now that you're at this kind of scale, and any tips for local media companies who might kind of want to copy your playbook there.
Well, I'm only going to give tips to the ones in Toronto who we compete with. I think that's the best thing I can do. No, honestly, if you can compete with us and do a better job, whether it's magazines or anything else, I have my hats off to you. I just think we work as hard as we can, and we do the best we can, and competition is healthy, and I'm respectful of it. Sorry, so I was being a bit flippant. Well, we monetize it by selling reels, we sell stories, we sell contests, we do a lot of collabs, all of the traditional things, carousels, all of the traditional things that you sell on Instagram. That's not really what I think your publishers want to know. I think what they want to know is, like, how do you sell that? So for us now, a lot of our sales are generated by just incoming leads. The best, and that was the same with the magazines too, like in the early days, and even now. If you publish your magazines, just to go over the magazines for a sec, into the most established and affluent communities in the country or in a city, that's where the business owners live.
Right.
And you know what, business owners, they're pretty smart. They go, just like you said about your pizza place, they go, hey, I read this. Hey, I follow Streets of Toronto. Hey, I like their newsletter, whatever it is. If I like it, that means there's an audience of like-minded people to me. And that's my customer, because that's why I built my pizzeria. That's why I built my home improvements company. That's why I built my car dealership, whatever it is. So
Hmm.
I'd like to reach people like me. Normally, entrepreneurial business owners, also social's not really particularly a national game, right? It's more of a major market, regional or local. So that helps, like having that audience. So we get a lot of leads coming in. That also does not help your publishers, but we generate those leads, by just by providing like lively content, and we have we're dedicated to hosted videos. We do one hosted video every single day of the week, every single day of the year. So we have hosts. You start to know them if you're on our feed. They become pseudo celebrities. So they're celebrity to you, and they're fantastic. Our team is incredible. Like if they ever listen to this, I just want them to know I'm so grateful for them. And having hosted videos and going around and sort of demoing what you can do, going to the coolest art galleries, the coolest live events, the coolest street festivals, the best new restaurants or places where there's, you know, I don't know, a pop up doing ice cream sandwiches or ramen or tacos or whatever it is that's your jam. We do that every single day, 365 days a year, and often more than that. So that kind of dedication of content drives the business, because here is an example of what we can do for you. And at
Hmm.
the same time, the audience digs it. So it's, you got to create content anyway. You might as well create things that people can see themselves doing.
Hmm.
So that's one way. The other way is, we sell, our team sells, our traditional print team sells, but print teams are very specific. They're very good at print. They're less good at social. It's a totally different trick.
Right.
Selling rectangles is very different than selling a social media campaign. We're very fortunate that our sales team has come a long way in being able to do that, but it took a while because they were really good at print, and wouldn't want to take them away from that, but they learned. But we also have an outside agency that we work with really closely, and they sell social for us as well. I would
Hmm.
encourage whoever to go find a PR company or someone who's an agency and have them represent you as well. And we have one person from that agency works at our company 1 day a week, who comes in and embeds with our social team and gets to know them. And it's really important because when their team sells, this person can explain our audience better by having been part of the process. They sit in on a content meetings, or they sit in on critique meetings, or whatever it is we're having, and it gives them. They're not selling when they do that, but they are learning how to sell. Because the better you understand something, the easier it is to sell. So I hope that's helpful. We're also putting together a network of two other independent social media feeds, which we're having actually we've been meeting about this for a little while now, like a couple of weeks, to go across the country, so that we're each going to represent a major city in Canada. There are several major cities in Canada for this. There's going to be Montreal, Toronto, and Vancouver, which are probably the three major cities, other than Calgary and Edmonton, that your listeners are familiar with. And we're going to be represented by an agency who represents the three of us on a sort of a national level, and we're going to see how that does. So that's another opportunity to grow your audience and grow your advertising revenue.
Very cool. Yeah, no, that's super. Well, even like you were saying, like this might not be helpful because we have this and everything. I think a lot of that stuff is helpful. Like with just the idea of how you go out to all the affluent neighborhoods and everything. Even if somebody doesn't have that benefit of their publication or something, it's a mindset thing of like, well, how could I do that? How could I get in front of the people that I want to get in front of? So I think it's super
Right.
helpful.
Just
Um,
like community newspapers, just like every publication is a community newspaper, it's hard. You live in a 20,000 person town. Toronto is just, and LA is just, and so on and on and on, is just a series of towns. Some of them are
right,
20,000 people, some of them are 50,000 people, and it's all grouped, right? You choose where you live in a city, sort
hmm,
of based on a town mentality, right?
right. Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So there's that. And people define themselves by where they live, and the people that they live next to.
Yep. Yep. Great stuff. All right, I'm done with social media. I won't ask any more about that. I have one more question written down here, and you've kind of touched on it a few times, but I'm going to ask you again anyway. Um, because you just kind of talked about your mindset, building that community, indie rock station, viewing it as a community, all that. And you talked about hitting singles. We talked about that a lot. But I just had written down a lot of publishers I've talked to are looking for a silver bullet to kind of save their business, local news in particular. Um, from your perspective, what is the mindset shift they need to make instead of, because it's kind of hard, you get in a scarcity kind of mindset of I need to, bring in revenue now, I need to save the business, for a lot of like local news outlets and stuff. How would you recommend, because you have a great mindset, you have a great way of thinking about this, what kind of, I'll stop rambling. How would you
No,
answer
that was
that?
so
Yeah,
that was so nice. Thank you for
yeah,
saying that. I really
yeah,
appreciate that, actually.
yeah.
I hope that's true, but thank you for saying it. I think, like, I obviously didn't prepare for this question, but or most of them. Sorry. But the top two things that come to mind with this are, well, a couple years ago, I decided that I didn't care where the revenue came from, like
Hmm.
within reason, other than the gambling and the narcotics. No, I didn't care where the money came from, as far as whether it came from the magazines, it came from the classifieds of the magazines, it came from the website, it came from the newsletters, it came from the live events. It came from, we sell merch. We do best doctors and best lawyers lists, and we have plaques that we sell with that, and the social side. I didn't care. Like, I realized it just doesn't matter. But what matters is, of course, making money. But you can't get too stuck on where that money is coming from. You just kind of have to work on a lot of different fronts. This is not the publishing. I mentioned that salespeople focus, print salespeople have always been able to just sell rectangles, and that's it's kind of great, right? Like, you can focus on one thing and making that rectangle or that square or whatever, the focus of your existence. You can't. You have to be agnostic. You have to be open to every different revenue stream. It's not just like you're a traditional publisher and you're going to print magazines. You have to have the flywheel, like the social drive has driven our print business significantly. Significantly. We were up like 20% last year organically with no new publications. Well, I was wondering why. And I just think it's because the whole flywheel of content and vibe and everything is working. The newsletters work, the web works, and so that's number one. Be agnostic. Think about all the different things that you can do. Don't think of all the things that you want to do. It just doesn't work like that anymore. You can't just do that. And I think that the second piece of that is, how to say this. Sorry, it's hard to take a second on a podcast.
No,
Never thought about that.
it's all good. Also, I should have mentioned I edit everything in post, so I can
Excellent. This
trim
should
this up a
definitely be
bit. So
edited out.
take
For
your
sure.
time. I'll mark
This is
the
the
clip.
part, Paul, edit this part out. I would say, so being agnostic is one, not caring where the revenue comes from. And the second piece is fight the battle where you are strongest. This just sounds so obvious. It sounds so obvious, but it is not. So we, years ago, and we've always been super successful in print. And there was a new company that came along, and they were really strong on web. They were super strong, and it was really frustrating. I'm so frustrated. Like, why can't we be strong on web? Why the heck? And of course, they were only doing web, right? And print is its own, beast, and web is its own beast. And I respect everybody for doing what they do well, but fight the battle where you're strongest. So we would be like, oh yeah, our website's amazing. And theirs was clearly had a larger audience at that time. But then we started to combine print with the website. We're like, well, we can't just beat them on the web, but what if we combine our sales model? So when you're buying an ad with us, you're not just buying web, you're buying print. This may sound so obvious, but if you think about all the different things that publications and publishing companies do, fight the battle where you're strongest. Don't try and look at your competition and try and fight them where they're strongest. Make them fight. Combine what you're doing, so that made us even stronger, because nobody else had print publications who was really strong on the web, as an example. Okay. And that extrapolates today to live events, to newsletters, to the social, which is actually one of the strongest pillars of what we do. And we combine that, it's game over for most people, right?
Yeah. That's great advice. It is like obvious, but easy to miss when you're kind of in the trenches and everything like that.
The problem with publishing is it's hard, and you get frustrated, and you see someone else doing something, and you want to do that as well as they do, and that's okay. You can sometimes do that, but why choose to fight that battle on their turf? Have them fight it on theirs and yours, right? It's just a
Yeah.
simple thing. I don't know
Yeah.
if it helps anybody. I hope it does.
Yeah. No, I think so. I think so. I think it's well said. Um, awesome, man. That's everything I had written down. I feel like we should do this again sometime if you're down 6 months or a year. I can think of a lot more stuff, and I feel like you're really easy to talk to too. So it
I
makes
think
my
thanks.
job
I think
easy.
I find you're great at this, and I enjoyed finding about you and your business and your family a little bit before
Yeah.
in those first
Thanks.
5 6 minutes. Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it. I hope I've been able to
Yeah.
help somebody out there. Publishers, we don't really compete with each other if you think about it. There's a guy in Denver and a guy in your town. I
Yeah.
don't compete with him. He doesn't
Right.
compete with me. So it's great to be partake of their knowledge and to be able to share a little bit of mine. So thanks again, Paul.
Yeah, that's kind of the cool thing about the industry. Real quick, what should I link to? What do you want to promote? I'll link to Post City, Streets of Toronto. I'll at least do the Instagram so people can pick that out since we've been
Yeah, I
talking
think
about it a
Streets
lot.
of Toronto Instagram would be great. I
Okay,
think the website, streetsoftoronto.com would be great. Those two will give everybody a real feel for what we're doing. And if people have questions, please feel free to reach out to me. I reserve the right never to answer, but I will.
awesome, cool. I'll do that too. Lauren, thanks so much, man. I really appreciate
Thanks,
it.
Paul.
Yeah,
Be
have a good.
well. Enjoy the Twins.
Yep,
See you,
you could.
buddy.
Yep,